Yeah. I got
Right, then they can do it.
Marilyn?
You're right.
Ready? All right, call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let me first start off by welcoming our new planning board member, former town councilman Paul Palmer. Welcome. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes from our meeting on January 22nd. We approved a resolution granting site plan approval for 3144 Route 22. And then we had a resolution authorizing release of planning board escrows. Then we had some discussion about that. And then we discussed the consultant's agreement with regard to shared services. And then we have tonight's meeting. So, motion to approve the minutes made by Member Rahman, seconded by Williams. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, that passes 5-0 with 2 absences. All right, next we have Sherman Hill Road, 2 family. To come to the podium.
Forgot my board today, so if you guys need me to lift it up, just let me know. Alrighty.
There it is.
Okay.
Ready when you guys are.
You're ready to go.
Alrighty. So hi everyone, good to see you all again. Peter Sander, Reading Engineering, representing the applicant on this one. So since the last time we submitted I don't know if anyone remembers the previously submitted plans, which caused for the addition of 4 structures on each lot, 2 dwelling units each with an accessory apartment. So our issue with that was that kind of lent into the unclear territory of multi-family use, which I believe that's how we landed. So instead, the applicants are looking to do 2 family residences on each of the lots. So as you'll see, we have 2 one-bedroom. I guess it's all right. 2 buildings on each lot, each with 2 units with 1 bedroom each, for a total of 16 units. So if you've read the notes, it kind of goes into depth in here, but essentially what is going on is that because the original subdivision that created these lots was a flexible subdivision, it allowed for different interpretations of the density and the acreages required that would permit a 2-family unit. Traditionally, a 2-family unit other than in the HRHM district, requires you to have double the acreages, but there's an extra bulleted point on there that says that if created as part of a flexible subdivision through the special use permit process, that you would be able to reduce the acreages necessary for those 2-family dwelling units. So essentially what we're saying here is that the subdivision, being a flexible subdivision, would permit the construction of these units by utilizing our common sewage and water supply systems, which reduce the density and acreages required to construct 2-family units. That's through the use of common and or municipal sewer water. That's similar to the 3185 project where we were able to get more units out of less acreage using those common systems. So that's kind of where we're at currently. So what we've reviewed right now is that we have sufficient acreages, but as the AKRF letter gets into, we need to proof those out using the original subdivision that it was created to make sure that when they were doing the density calculations at the time, that it allowed for the amount of units that we are currently proposing. So, other than that, it's a fairly straightforward, I know we have a lot to address on these comment letters, but other than that, we don't really foresee, it's more proofing it out rather than trying to get the plans themselves to work. So, what we want to do is present to the board our new layout and to see, just kind of go through these comments and see what the planning board would like to see in subsequent submissions for this. And our ultimate goal is to get this circulated to the county as quickly as possible, just to get their comments so we could better incorporate them into our revised our revised site plan set. So I don't know if you wanted to touch base on anything?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
So, yeah, happy to answer any questions.
All right, so looking at each individual unit, so 2 units in a building.
Yep.
What's the footprint of a unit?
A unit, it's a two-story structure.
Just trying to get a sense of scale here.
I believe they are footprints.
I think it's 1,020 each.
That's what.
Yeah, it'd be
1,020, okay.
1,020 each.
And it's 2 stories, so it's 2,040 each. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And so it looks like just side by side doors at the front and. Okay. All right. So just I don't know how. So if you drive up on these, they're going to look. It would look like just like a house with 2 doors in front of it, like a 4,000 square foot
So-
house with 2 doors in the middle.
My first submission,
Yeah.
where I had the 2-family house with the garage attached in the apartment, just
Right.
lob off the garage. It's
Right.
that same house,
Okay.
you know.
All right. I haven't seen a lot of not a lot of housing around here that has like all this parking in front of the houses. It just seems, I don't know. A lot of what I've read about, heard about, gone to trainings for is that you try and put like a lot of the parking on the side or in the back or.
So I would, the reason why one that we have ours up front is,
Yeah.
one, it limits the amount of road that we need to construct into the site. But more importantly, 2 is we don't really need to hide them because the views for the residences will be out the backside. Whereas this is kind of an isolated site. It doesn't have any neighbors. It doesn't have any, it's surrounded by DEC. So we're not really trying to screen anything from neighboring eyes. So this is why we figure that this parking lot layout is probably the most efficient and easiest to
I like
construct.
to think that it preserves a lot of green space behind that the tenants would utilize.
Okay.
Yardage and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know.
And do you think it's typical to have, my count here is that there's 2 parking spots per unit?
Correct.
So, but each unit's 1 bedroom. So it's a 2,000 plus square foot unit. That's 1 bedroom and then obviously a bunch of other rooms to make up 2,000
Yeah.
square feet.
Living room, dining room, kitchen, it's a full-blown house.
Right.
I mean, there might be future plans to make them 2-bedroom. We don't want to overcomplicate that with the whole septic. That's more of an engineering issue than a
Right.
planning board issue.
So what would happen at that point where if it becomes
One
2
of the
bedrooms and,
Offices upstairs could easily be reclassified. One of the spare rooms upstairs could be.
right,
From the engineering side of things, the septics were sized for a 4-bedroom house, hence why we're using 4 bedrooms
Right.
split between 2 units.
but then if each unit then decides, well, I'm going to turn my office into a bedroom, then it's an 8-bedroom house.
Peter, wasn't they 3 bedrooms and you're going to have them reclassified to 4?
The original septic?
I believe they're approved as 3 bedrooms.
I'll have to double check that. I assume
And
they
because
were,
of the renumbering, for so board knows, back when this was approved, they used to use 150 a day for a bedroom. Now they're using 110. So 3.
When you say 1 thing, you mean gallons?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 3 1-bedrooms would be 450 gallons. 4 110s are 440. but it's still a administrative process review by the health department to make that change.
Okay.
If I remember what I saw on the approved map with 3 bedrooms. But it's doable, but it's not approved as 4 right now, it's approved as 3.
Okay.
It's an administrative thing we have to see from the health department as part of the approvals.
Yep.
But, so then, again, if 4 bedrooms becomes 5, 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, then the septic isn't sized for that.
Correct. The only way we would do a second bedroom is if, again, we approach that topic with the engineer to say, can we get the capacity? You know, there's many layers to this, and we're such in the infancy, but a long process that we didn't want to pile on too much and overcomplicate it to no end result, you know?
Sure.
Knowing that we're going forward, we get comments back from the state, everything seems fine, it's easy to say, well, let's explore how big of a septic can we do to get maximum bedroom counts at that point. To do it now is just a futile effort, you know?
Okay.
That make sense?
Oh, did you say 4, Joe?
Pardon?
Did you say 8 then 4?
The SDSs are currently approved for 3, I believe, but they could easily be retasked for 4.
That could probably just be a mistypo or typo on my plan.
No, I'm looking, I think it says 4.
Does it say 4?
We'll have to confirm, because it's
Okay.
really small.
On the original septic, I'll double check on that. Either way, as Joe said, that they're
thought-
sized sufficiently.
Typically, you show 3 or 4 on the table, but I think the sizes on there shown were for 3.
Yeah, because they have the alternative option if you want to build the 4th, so.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
sounds like
So
it's
either way-
something to figure out here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's not
All right, I don't have any other questions or comments at this time. Member Roman? No. Member Milano?
No.
Member Palmer? Member Williams?
None here.
No, okay. All right, Attorney Polidoro?
Well, one question, you're calling this common sewer, but each lot is gonna have its own sewer? You're saying it's common because there's 2 structures on the lot?
Well,
I just don't
to,
understand what the common sewer plan is.
2 structures sharing a single septic field.
So 4 units sharing.
4
this.
units.
All 4 units share one.
Sharing.
It's the same principle that 3185 was done on.
But if it was one house with 4 bedrooms, it wouldn't be a,
common system.
Common system.
Yeah, it would just be a primary system for the
but it'll be the
residents.
same number of bedrooms.
Yeah.
Correct.
Bedrooms
Is
based
that
on
what
capacity.
is that what they're going for? I mean,
I mean,
they being the
I think the way
rules?
the code was written was this concept that when you're on a shared septic system, you can have higher density, but I think the number won't make a difference because you're relying on the flexible subdivision standards in any event.
Yeah, but if I build a shed and put in a toilet, do then I then have a shared septic system with myself? I don't.
No, that would be a residence.
Only bedrooms.
Oh, right. So I could have 20 toilets and it wouldn't count for a
But see,
septic.
it's
Okay.
one ownership here, so the interpretation feels a little odd that it's a shared septic because
Right.
it's the same lot, but
Well, I mean, again, the 31851, all shared ownership there as well, but they're all, again, using the common system.
yeah, okay.
I know we're looking at 4 individual lots as the master plan, so to speak, but again, rule only pertains to the one lot. 4 dwelling units, 2 structures, common.
I guess it sounds like what you're saying is we should treat this as like 8 apartment buildings, each with 2 apartments. That are each 2,000 square feet, very big apartments, I guess.
2-family houses.
Sure.
Yeah.
but, I mean, to
The-
go
the
back to
units is the most important part.
Go back to your example for 3185 it was apartment buildings. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, you're going to prove out your density calculations, so we'll review it when you send it in. And then I just want to remind the board that you do have jurisdiction to push for, parking in the rear and more landscaping and lights, and to make this feel more like a residential neighborhood development instead of, what it is.
Okay.
That hurts.
No,
But, and also, I do want to just point out, if you look at the area map, if you do push them to the rear, they then become more exposed to adjacent properties because of how those lots are laid out.
Okay.
Not to put down anything you were.
I'm just saying, there's options, there's landscaping, I'm sure there's ways to make things.
These
These aren't paved lots, they're gravel, right?
Gravel,
So you're not going to
correct.
have striping, it's not going to look so formalized, so,
Mhm.
it was just I had the question in the memo too, has there been any exploration of that,
again, we try to
It's not
save
possible.
that green space behind. I know like from the curb and the road coming in, I get your thought process, and it makes perfect sense. We explored that when we first did this. But then if you kind of did the way your mindset is and you saw it then, you have a nice little front of the house, but everything that tenants would enjoy or use or look at is parking lot. Yeah.
Why were the garages taken out? Just, they didn't really work with this plan, or?
It's setbacks, distances between the buildings, it was tight cramming this on there and the impervious surface, that it was just, again, not to overcomplicate it, but too many layers on this, Trying to make this streamlined, make your guys' job easy.
All right, let's go to Engineer Berger and then back to Planner Warner to go over the memo.
Okay, so as you proceed, you're obviously going to show the grading and the storm that's coming down the road. As you proceed with the drawing, you will need to supply a surveyor's map, because this is an engineer's map right now, and with topo done by the surveyor, because you're using county LiDAR, I believe. It looks like,
Well, it is all based off of a surveyor's map.
because on one of the notes was that it was LiDAR, which I assumed was the county LiDAR.
Yeah, I believe,
But even if it's based on a surveyor's, you need to have the surveyor's map there.
okay. Yeah, because I believe what he used was the county LiDAR to
Yeah.
populate
Well,
it.
the county LiDAR is for informational purposes, can't be used for design.
Okay,
So you will need your topo.
okay. We'll have to double check with Kirk on that then.
So those are things you'll need to move forward. And you'll have to show the septic design that's on there, and ultimately have the health department either provide a letter saying that the previous approval, and then quote it, or integrate. We want to be able to, when we go to build this thing, look at this map and this approval for what you're going to build, and not go back to another map that was not that's a subdivision map. It has to be complete. So you have to have your septic tank, your D-box, your field, whatever was approved or may need to be modified to when you go through the health department. One of the reasons you also need health department to review this is we're now putting two buildings to one system, even though the system may be big enough. You are sending two buildings, whether you choose to have two septic tanks or one, I don't know, but the health department's going to weigh in on that, along with the D-box and all the other things to make it work.
Yeah.
So we'll be need that seen as you generate the plans, along with your Chapter 65 for erosion control as you move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Engineer Berger. Planner Warner?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff that's in this memo is already kind of discussed, but we can go through some of it. Not much has changed on the procedural end with the original application that they came in with. It's a lot of the same stuff applies. It needs the county referral. I don't think we're ready to do that yet, but board can decide. Talked about health department for the septic. This does define the project as a major project, which requires the long EAF, the full EAF, even though it's an unlisted action. Going along with what the code asks for, we would want to look at that, a full EAF for the seeker to cover this. You're not going to call it type 1, but it requires that form. There's other requirements too that come out of that. The agricultural data statement as well. Number 4 was asking for that letter of agent on the other owners, which is a holdover from last time. Number 5 is Chapter 65. Joe kind of already outlined that. Number 6 is talking about ARB. In this case, new construction over 2,000 square feet. Even though it's two-family, there's a special permit request, so that automatically triggers the ARB. There is some language in the code that says two-family residences are not subject to ARB, but because this is a application for a special permit to allow these in this zone, you're going to have to look at the architecture. So I know your original submission had some elevations and
We can put those back.
renderings. It's probably helpful to have those redone. And I don't know if the board is interested in looking at floor plans. I know you mentioned the possibility of one bedroom being 2 in the future. There's like a den or an office, so I think it makes sense to show those too if you have them. All right, let's move on down to 7. That's just acknowledging that these are allowed by special permit, 2-family dwellings in a flexible subdivision, which was approved about 20 years ago. Number 8 is asking for the square footage of the units, which I think it sounds like roughly 1,020 per unit. Is that right? Just looking at the footprints.
Yep,
So
correct.
the minimum is 800, so you're fine there with what you're proposing here. So number 9 is, again, this is a special permit, and by default, a site plan is required. So I've laid out all the different requirements of a site plan that the planning board does have the ability to waive some of these. Joe mentioned the contours in the survey map, which I think is important. It's a 20-year-old subdivision. You know, the important thing is here, we want to also establish a solid record here, given that there's been 20 years since this was last looked at. There's been a lot of development on those lots. The housing market's not, wasn't as hot in 2006, 2007 as it is now. So, all these things that are required on a site plan for something new like this, I think it's important to consider. So we've laid them all out here. The wetland delineation's, over 20 years old. I realize the lots are above it significantly, but, it's something that the town's asked for on other projects, and you have DEC land here. DEC is going to get this. They're probably going to come back with the same comment, so you might as well.
Just curious what to submit then for a wetland verification, right? Because if we're prepping a map, it's going to be off-site wherever we prep it.
Right.
So I just or a sign-off from DEC, would that work as well?
What do you think, Joe?
Typically, are you stating the wetlands off your property?
They're all off the
I
property.
mean, that's what you're.
Yeah.
It always can come on, but you're under the belief it's off your property.
Correct,
So
yeah.
what your DEC typically does, you're going to still have to get a letter from DEC stating that, but the DEC is not going to take that without you sending them a professional letter from a wetland specialist that has walked the site, and there's no wetland on the site, and therefore it's off the site because they cannot make you flag off your site.
Gotcha.
But I just went through this on my own in a private another job I'm doing, and the DEC made me get a wetland biologist to verify that the wetland was 500 feet away from where I'm at.
Right, and it's not just the wetland, it's the adjacent area.
In the
as well.
adjacent area, yeah. That's the main
Yeah.
reason. It's the 100-foot buffer that they're concerned with. But even with that, it's tough. They will not make you flag off-site. So it's going to be, if the 100-foot buffer is within your property, that's going to be more of a point of communication with DEC
Okay.
you're going to have to do. If the 100-foot buffer is completely off, your wetland biologist will have to write that letter
Okay.
and somehow coordinate with the surveyor to make sure he knows where the property line is. So when he's walking it,
Yeah,
They-
he knows where it
he or
is.
she can, whoever they are, can verify with proper credentials to DEC. More likely than not, they may even ask you about, did you look on on their DEC site too to see if there's any turtle action within that zone?
I haven't looked at it, but
Because
that'll
the-
just be flagged on the full EAF when we end
Yeah,
up
but,
submitting
yeah,
it.
I would look at that before
Yeah.
contacting DEC, because what DEC is now asking for, when relevant to turtles, is even if they're not near, but if they're somewhat within a 500-foot radius, to have a professional write a letter saying there's no turtles on your site, habitat on
500
site.
feet now? Really? All
Yes.
right.
Turtles aren't as slow as you think they
I
are.
mean, the original, the approval from 2003 had a habitat assessment as part of it.
Yeah.
But again, it's old now,
Yeah, they're
right?
gonna
So,
want a new one.
but bog turtle, timber rattlesnake, and golden eagle were all identified around
Yeah,
there.
you're gonna need that anyway, but more importantly, if they're not on the site, you might as well wrap that up with the wetland with the same letter. because-
Yeah, get it all submitted at the same time.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's just something that the DEC currently is doing.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Joe.
Just some
Dr.
comments on number 10. Was asking for, let's see. Oh, yeah, just verifying the setback. I think you're measuring it from the edge of pavement, but just verify that. Architectural elevations will be needed. It sounds like you're still going to be below the maximum height permitted, but again, it's required that we look at those drawings. I'm on 12 now. So you're showing that you're not going to exceed the 10% impermeable by lot. I assume that's the case for the whole development too. Can you provide those
Prove it
numbers?
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think there's language in the code that actually says like for the entire subdivision, you have to have that met.
So the one lot includes the roadway. So that roadway in and of itself could be over 10%.
Good, you're right.
That is-
I have a note in there saying that that's more of a common drive and excluded. I've measured from the impervious surfaces for the flag portion of the lot.
Right, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if it says, it's not supposed to be 10% more than this many acres. and
Right.
It's 4.078 acres.
Which includes the,
Right,
Yeah,
includes the roadway,
exactly.
which is,
That's why that, yeah.
Possibly.
That's why that lot's larger than the others, because of that.
Mhm.
right.
So if
Could
you
be.
take that out, I guess, can you still meet that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, the parking lots and the buildings wouldn't be more than 10%.
But they're gravel, so you're trying to take credit, right?
Oh, okay.
I actually
right.
included the gravel in those counts.
Okay.
I thought gravel
So that they all are,
was impervious, though.
Yeah, Engineer Berger, I thought you said gravel,
It's a zoning thing. For
Right.
stormwater, it's considered impervious, but for zoning, for classifications of this, it's really what our definition says. Some towns do, some towns don't
Right.
consider
and
gravel.
our town definition doesn't really,
Yeah, I don't think we
go
really
into
say
it
it, but
either.
you shouldn't just use the stormwater definition for density calculations. It's because the reason we do it for stormwater is for different purposes.
Right.
But depending on what town you are in Dutchess County, some towns have specifically said gravel is impervious for the purposes of the zoning calc.
in reality, in the real world, I mean, gravel isn't as impermeable as asphalt, but it's obviously, no, it's
It's more impermeable.
more permeable than asphalt, but it's
Yes.
not as impermeable, it's not
Yes.
as permeable as soil, like, I mean,
No, it's not. But in reality, though, you get if you had a hard pan, driven over dirt parking area,
Right.
that gets harder than a
Right.
gravel does.
Sure, that's true.
But that would be considered pervious and not
Right.
density.
Right.
So so I don't think using the definition for stormwater should be necessarily used for the purposes of bulk, unless our code says it is. So I'll leave that up to Eric.
Well, it
Aaron.
sounds like you're already assuming they are for this calculation.
I've included it just in case we would need to pave them. And in the case I wanted to be able to prove out that our design works regardless.
Okay.
But obviously, we would prefer to not incorporate the gravel, one, because I personally don't think it's an impervious surface to the degree that the zoning code is trying to stop that. They're trying to really stop parking lots from paving over entire fields.
Right.
Not so much residential driveways and parking areas.
Certainly in a planning situation, a gravel parking lot will not heat up and cause the same heat effect that an asphalt parking lot would.
sure.
So in a gravel area, it's much more beneficial for development to have it with gravel.
I mean, the only lot I could foresee being over 10% would be lot 17, just because of how relatively small it is. And just looking at the, what, an acre's 40,000 or so square feet, so 1.4 is 56,000 or so square feet. You got the two buildings, they're each 2,000 something square feet, and then the parking lot. So, I mean, you're getting close to 5,600, 10% would be 5,600 square feet, you're getting close.
So the code defines impermeable/impervious as any material covering the ground through which water does not readily penetrate, including but not limited to roof structures, compacted soil, pavement consisting of concrete, oil and stone, tar, or asphalt. So
It doesn't say gravel.
it doesn't say gravel.
But it's not an it's not, the list isn't, it's only these things.
It says
yeah.
including but not limited to. So the
Like
question
you-
is, does water readily penetrate it or not?
Using your septic,
Every drainage uses gravel.
a French drain, to use gravel to take the
Sure.
water in.
No, you're right.
Yeah, again, we shouldn't use the stormwater definition because
Right.
DEC is intending to try to, DEC talks about a 100-year storm design.
Right.
not the normal, what you would think that for 1 year or less where gravel would, if you look at a storm where you're getting a half an inch or inch of storm, the water doesn't move down the gravel, it goes through it. It's only when you start getting 5, 6, 7 inches of rain
Right.
where the water starts flowing across gravel.
Sure.
DEC is making a different standard because they're worrying about flooding
Right.
in large events where planning is for a different purpose.
I do wonder, though, if this is going to be all rental units and someone's going to come down and plow them, do you expect that you will just pave them after some time because it's easier to maintain?
Not necessarily. I have properties that have gravel driveways and stuff like that, you know. The professional plow companies are used to plowing gravel driveways. A little more maintenance, you gotta come back, fix some gravel, stuff like that, but to answer your question, no, that one doesn't dictate the other, really.
Okay.
Pretty
Okay.
maintenance.
So number 13, back to the memo, is just on the density calculation. It sounds like you have an understanding of what we're looking for there, just to use the methods to come up with a number that makes sense. I mean, the previous submission you gave us in the map that we looked at from 2003 showed that it was like 48 was the number of units, right?
Mhm.
Based on all that, using the acreage calculations that are in the code. So if you could narrow that down and just show how that comes out to 48, using the site plan criteria that we need, you know, including showing wetland areas, showing steep slopes, showing the right contours that Joe had asked for.
I'm curious if whether or not the original documentation would be sufficient to satisfy that. Just because if it's based off of the standards that were developed at the time, you know, those,
So the final map from '03 doesn't have anything on it. What we saw, what I'm talking about is the original project that you came in with originally, which was
yeah, and they had
the
all the.
accessory, yeah.
Well, what I'm asking
it
is
was-
because they would have to proof out the flexible subdivision, part of the Sherman Hill subdivision, right? They would have to have
Yes.
provided that documentation to do that. So if we were able to find those original calculations from that subdivision and use
That would-
those to,
that could
would that
help.
work as well? Rather than us kind of going through recalculating the slopes, recalculating wetland areas and things like that? Could we use the
The
original?
wetland areas would be my only, you know, given the time period that's passed, but, you know, slopes probably haven't changed at all, but wetlands do, so.
Yep.
But that's
You can
a
find
good
it.
start, if you can find it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked for it all over, like, in, you know. as much
Yeah, I
as
hear
could
it's
get.
a buried in there, if it is.
Okay.
Hadji, Martin, and Del Benny did the maps back in 2005.
Hadji's has a different company now, but.
So it's not the same name.
They don't have the files, though.
Oh, okay.
I went back to them,
Well, he doesn't have the same files.
they were not able to produce anything. I don't know if that's
I mean, from
true,
what-
they didn't look, but that was a dead end.
From what I remember from the last iteration of this, there was some numbers in there. I saved it here. It was like 101.7 gross acreage. The wetlands were about 48. So that gets you a net of 53.64. Then you multiply that by the 0.9 and you get 48 acres. And multiply that by 1 and you get 48 units. So that's how it was calculated. So if you could get that 48 acre number of wetlands, et cetera, more refined, you know, based on what you might
Yeah.
find.
Yeah,
Could help.
okay.
Yeah. I'm not disputing the 101 because it's easy to find. So, all right. 14, parking. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the parking. It sounds like this is the configuration that works the best. You know, 2 spaces per dwelling unit is probably adequate for something like this, since it's not, you know, near the train, it's not walkable necessarily, and it's 1-bedroom units, which might conceivably have a couple in there with one, you know, a car each person. You know, it's up to the board ultimately what you want to use, but, you know, they're going with 2 per unit right now, which seems fine. 15 was just asking about, you know, the common area. It sounds like these are going to be rentals, and that means all the yard would be just common open space for everybody, ignoring lot lines and stuff. So does that mean, was there any thought about providing any kind of outdoor spaces for, as community spaces? Or seating or, gazebo or something.
Not really. They have private decks. I can shoot it. They share a backyard. It's.
They got the Swamp River. You can go kayaking, tubing, fishing, all sorts of recreational activities.
But if you're talking about the possibility of increasing bedrooms,
No.
children, play area, but it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah.
That could be in the future, but just thoughts. Consider.
Are you proposing a trail down to the Swamp River to then allow for those activities?
Yeah, it's not our property. It's a DEC's.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's in there, so you can respond to it if you want. Number 16, the floodplain overlay is in this area, right? We have the floodplain line on your site plan, but Joe pointed out to me, and I tend to agree, it doesn't really follow a contour like they normally should. So maybe that's something that can get better refined when you have the properly surveyed and topo site plan for us to look at.
This is what the county parcel access
And
is.
that's what I assume you use that to show it on the plan, right?
Yeah, I didn't look at I assume that's it's a Zone A, so it has an elevation. So parcel access does an approximation based on
Right.
their topo that the GIS person used, where in reality, when it's a Zone A, it's the elevation that is listed that follows that contour around, so it may actually help you, because it seems like it cuts into a lot closer than some places where it should.
Yeah, and you have some reserved septic areas that are in the floodplain, which isn't permitted, so,
Probably not true, so.
yeah. So it's probably in your benefit to try to get
Sharp
that.
angle, you got their flood zone through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a potential problem for definitely lot 16 and maybe lot 15.
Yeah, 15 and 16 have the part of the reserve in the
In the
in the
floodplain.
Yeah.
floodplain.
Right here. Yeah, there.
And you're better off doing that now before you submit to the health department, because I suspect that would be one of their comments.
All right, 17 is just acknowledging the stream corridor overlay. Having that on your site plan will be helpful. I don't think you have any issues with it, given how far away you are from the river. Same with the aquifer overlay district, just include the notes as appropriate. There is a procedure to follow in that we have to submit the EAF to the Conservation Commission. That's what the code says. So I think, we'll make sure that that happens. All right, moving on to the secret section. A lot of these are just holdovers from the last memo that we had on their first submission. Calling out the wetlands. DEC is going to see this. Most likely, we're going to refer it to them, given the fact that they own that conservation area next to the subdivision here. So we'll see if they come back with any comments. 20 is just talking about the wetlands and the age and the delineation. Joe touched on what could be done to address that. 21 is talking about the habitat, which, back in the 2003 process for the original subdivision, there was a pretty extensive seeker record from what I could find. They did a habitat assessment. They also did a archaeology assessment. And I believe some of the members went on a site walk, and it's pretty clear that this part of the area of the subdivision was an old ag field. So it's relatively flat where these lots are. It does drop down.
Yeah, to get away from
River. Yes, but, the area where these, lots 14 through 17 isn't exactly like a historic habitat area or any kind of historic archaeology area either, according to the documentation that's on file. So I don't think we'll have to deal with archaeology again. DEC might come back with something on species, but we'll have to just wait and see. Yeah, so that's really it. That's all I have right now on this memo. I know it's the original initial look, so it's quite a bit of work to do. And if you want to do a response memo, you can. But as far as recommendations, I don't think we're ready for any kind of referrals until we have the actual required plans that we need per the code.
Okay. Thank you. Planner Werner, having heard from our consultants, does any members of the planning planning board have any further comments or questions at this time? Okay. I just had one more thing as I'm looking at this. Let me just get this right side up again. So presumably the septic field should all be about the same size, right? So
Depends on the soils, but yes, correct.
Okay. Because either lot 17's is a lot bigger than the other three, or the other three are just a lot smaller than lot 17 for some reason?
The perk rate of the soil.
Because of
It's
the
also
soil?
could be
Sandy
the,
loam, bank run.
typically the depth of the soil.
Okay.
So you may have a groundwater, you hit some rock there,
Okay.
which makes the footprint bigger. Because the
Yeah,
soil
just-
there,
yeah.
It was one of those things after I kind of looked at this a little
Yeah.
closer right now, I'm like, why is this one so much bigger, or why are the other three so much smaller?
the
Yeah.
soil there's all about the same, so I suspect it's, you got 6 feet to them, but only 4 feet over there.
Yeah, one have more.
Some little groundwater,
Versus length. Yeah, wow.
so the fill pushes it out.
Gotcha. Okay.
I suspect.
Either way, the health department's going to have something to say on it.
That's
so-
why we're going to need the full design
Exactly.
on it, so that way the planning board and the people can see why it's different.
Yep.
These are the same system locations that you're showing from the 03
Yeah.
map, right?
Correct.
Based on the perk tests from back then and everything, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then, I guess
We got our list.
response to the memo and, you know when the deadlines are, so,
Yep.
okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.
All right, next we have NY Transco, Dover Electric Substation. Please come to the podium.
Good evening.
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 Welcome. So, we
Want me to go?
had some testing done, if our planner.
Yeah,
could
so,
get into that.
Right, so the last meeting, or a couple meetings ago, the board approved the scope of work for the Phase 2 test pit investigation at the site that AKRF was to perform, with oversight by Scott Taylor, the additional consultant that the town hired. Since then, the agreements were all put in place, the attorneys reviewed everything, and everything was signed. So the work actually was completed last week. It was from Tuesday to Thursday last week. Everything went according to the plan. There was 2 additional test pits excavated at the recommendation of Scott Taylor. So there's actually a total of 17 test pits that were sampled. The groundwater wells were both sampled, the existing monitoring wells that are there. There was water in them because it has rained a lot lately, and my understanding was that they didn't need to filter any of that water because there's so much of it, so they got good samples on the groundwater too. And yeah, this was a picture I sent around because I remember Roman had asked a couple of meetings back, what is this going to look like? Is there potential for a lot of erosion and runoff from this testing? And basically, they dug some holes, they backfilled them, compacted them, put down the hay for mulch purposes, and they marked each one with a stake so we know where they are. So it was really just digging holes, going inside them, and taking a look at the soil strata, right, and then taking a soil sample. It's a lot more comprehensive than a probe or a core sampling where I'm not a professional that does this, but digging a big hole with an excavator, you have a potential for a lot better sample. So that's what was done here, is to be extra conservative. And I understand that Transco's consultant TRC was out there also, and they took samples themselves as well, so that they can have their own data as well. So the lab report will probably be ready this week because it was expedited request. So I don't have the results now, but I think Brian plans to share those by the end of the week, and then the report.
Presuming they come in.
They should, yeah. I mean, every day that we were out there, the courier for the lab came every day and collected the samples. So that all happened each day. There was, they were picked up and brought back. So we can share the results, but the report itself needs a little time to prepare. And I think by the March meeting, we should be able to share that report with everybody in the public and talk about it.
Okay. Anything further from our consultants on this? Any members of the planning board have any questions? It's your project. Did you want to say anything?
Nope, I'm good. Yep.
Okay. All right, so that report should come in this week.
The lab data tables, I think, would be able to share a summary.
Also, yeah, not the report, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The information.
But the full Phase 2 report that, AKRF will prepare, professional engineered, signed, will probably be for the March meeting at this point, yeah.
All right, so we should get data in this week. That'll get
Yes.
sent to the planning board secretary and members, it'll then get posted onto the town's website. And then the report should come in March, shared
Yeah,
with the
in
secretary,
time
the
for
planning
the-
board members, and then
Yes,
that
it'll
should
be
get posted
shared,
on the website.
yes. If everything goes to Marilyn, and if she posts it, then the public has an opportunity to look at it.
Great, thank you. Okay,
That's it.
that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is request for extension, Harlem Valley Homestead.
Sure, I don't know if staff wants to go first, but in any event, it's Neil Alexander. I'm a partner at Cuddy and Fader here on behalf of the applicant. We're seeking our second 180-day extension on the subdivision. As you may be aware, the decision from the court came down in January and upheld the approvals you granted. And we need more time now. We're ready to go in earnest to go get our sister agency approvals. We've just been waiting to hear from the court.
Okay. And so you've heard from the court, obviously we all heard from the court with their decision. So have your clients done anything? since then?
Basically all of 2023. You gave your approval in March.
Right.
They commenced a lawsuit in April. The litigation was fully submitted around August, and we were waiting for a decision just to confirm it.
Right. Which just came in the last few weeks. I'm just asking if anything's happened since the
now
decision to now.
Since now we're pivoting to go get all our sister agency approvals.
Okay.
In earnest, move right ahead.
Okay. Any members of the planning board have any comments, questions? Consultants?
I think when this comes up for the third extension, you'll also need to apply for site plan. You want to keep track of that date.
You're correct. Unless anyone disagrees with the math that we ran, which please let us know, but we had it that essentially they'll become almost concomitant. The site plan, so it's runs in 180-day increments on the subdivision, but you also granted a site plan and a special permit. Site plan and a special permit run on 18 months, which then initially and then become renewable 1 year each.
Right.
So the 18 months on the site plan and the special permit would be basically September 6th.
Right.
This extension we're asking for on the subdivision would be like August 27th. So
Close.
I think it all should come back together
Right.
at that point in time.
Okay. So the idea being that you may then ask for both extensions in July for an August meeting or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely this summer, obviously.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is there any limitation to, obviously it doesn't make sense to
There's-
ask for an extension now because
Right,
it's 6
no.
months off, but I'm just, what's a,
Normally 30 days is
Right.
about when we process it. And they can have 8 subdivision extensions.
8?
Hopefully, we won't need all of them.
Hopefully not. We have some experience with extensions.
Well, record's 22 now, we do. So far.
Yeah.
Still going.
Okay, so nothing further. For me. Let me see. Resolution to grant second 180-day extension of conditional final subdivision approval, Harlem Valley Homestead. Whereas on March 6, 2023, the planning board granted the applicant Harlem Valley Homestead LLC, known as the applicant, conditional preliminary layout and final subdivision approval for a lot line alteration in conjunction with special use permit, site plan, architectural review board, and erosion sediment control permit approvals to establish a country inn/conference center use consisting of an agricultural/education center, farm stay lodging, educational workshops, retreats, and events on property located at 132 to 147 Old Forge Road, known as the project. And whereas the parcels involved in the project are identified as tax numbers 7160-00-981478, 7260-00-062777, -089448-123567 -0. Was it? 123597. Thank you. -089448 and -167790, collectively known as the site, and are located in the rural district, also known as RU, and resource conservation, also known as RC zoning districts, partially within the floodplain stream corridor and aquifer overlay districts, and partially within New York State Agricultural District 23. And whereas the subdivision is depicted on a plan entitled Proposed Lot Line Change prepared for Nano's Garden LLC, prepared by Insight Engineering, Surveying and Landscape Architecture, PC, dated October 14, 2020, known as the subdivision plat. And whereas approval of the subdivision plat was conditioned on satisfaction of 4 conditions of approval, and whereas pursuant to section 125-8 D, subsection 2 of the Town of Dover subdivision law, conditional approval of the final plat shall expire within 180 days after the resolution granting such approval, unless all requirements stated in such resolution have been certified as completed. And whereas the planning board may, in its discretion, extend the time in which a conditionally approved plat must be submitted for signature for not more than 8 180-day extensions. And whereas on August 21, 2023, the planning board granted the applicant a 180-day extension of time to complete the conditions of approval to and including February 29, 2024. And whereas by letter dated January 16, 2024, the applicant requested a second 180-day extension of time to satisfy the conditions of approval, due in part to delay caused by the Article 78 proceedings, Article 78 proceeding filed against the planning board challenging the board's approval of the project, index number 2023-51139. And whereas the planning board has considered the particular circumstances warranting an extension of the time to complete the conditions of approval, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby grants the applicant a second 180-day extension of time to complete the conditions of final subdivision plat approval to and including August 27, 2024. This resolution is being offered by Member Williams, seconded by Member Palmer. Discussion? Seeing no discussion. Resolution to grant second 180-day extension of conditional final subdivision approval, Harlem Valley Homestead. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Williams?
Aye.
Member Valano?
Aye.
Member Palmer?
Aye.
Member Roman? Aye. Chairman Courtine?
Aye. Resolution is adopted 5-0 with 2 absences. There you go.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Okay. All right, so our next scheduled meeting is March 4th, the deadline for which is next Wednesday, February 14th. Have we received anything so far?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. And then after that will be March 18th, deadline of February 28th. Is there any further business before the planning board? Seeing no further business before the planning board, make a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Member Rahman. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or adjourned.